So, continuing some of our quest through the historical nature of restaurants, according to the current edition of La Rue's Gastronomique, which is another kind of staple in the history of food and food culture, which I highly recommend you check out. And I'll try and get at least some excerpts of it uploaded, as well as of the physiology of taste, onto the course website momentarily as well. So here's where we have kind of our precursor to restaurants, which are cafes, generally defined as places selling drinks and snacks, maybe something to smoke, similar to a modern day hookah or otherwise, as you can see pictured there. And these were first established in Constantinople, or kind of the modern area of Turkey, in the 1500s. It was a coffee house of sorts, and hence the word cafe, which would be in many ways a direct translation of coffee. So when we actually say that we're having a coffee at a cafe, we're really saying we're having a coffee at a coffee. If we go back in history to more historical nature of coffee, some of the original terms would be called kahawa or kahawe throughout East Africa and the Arab lands, the Middle East as well, and has kind of become settled to be known as cafe throughout the rest of Europe, and then of course coffee here in the Americas. Cafes were places educated people went to share ideas and new discoveries. Patrons spent several hours in these establishments in one sitting, so rather than kind of the quick cafes of Starbucks today, they would be there for a while. Again, the same kind of concept of a restaurant in which we are restoring, right? And often in a social setting with other individuals. This trend caught on in Europe in the 17th century. And when cafes opened in France, they also sold brandy, sweetened wines, liqueurs, in addition to the coffee, of course, because the French would have been known to embellish in their wine, among other things. And so this was a way of kind of combining both. Later on, I can upload an article about the Protestant work ethic and cafes throughout revolutions, including the French Revolution and through England as well, and how they were seen as social houses and areas where revolutions really were started. So if you have any interest in kind of that link between sociocultural dimensions of the restaurant and food world, and any sort of kind of, I don't want to say political, but social atmosphere for surely, I can add those as well. So this first type of cafe was the Café Procoupe, which opened in 1696. So that's when it took, about a little over 100 years, 130, 140 years, in order to kind of change it into something which was more commercially orientated rather than just a generic social house or a public house, if you will. Thereafter, in the French Revolution really launched the modern restaurant industry. So we talked a little bit about previous to the French Revolution how the restaurant was a place for consommes or liquid-based soups. One of the reasons, as kind of depicted in this picture here, was what spawned the French Revolution was the kind of absence of food and the inability to access that food. Right, so we have at the time around the French Revolution Marie Antoinette in a very bourgeois culture saying, "Let them eat cake," when unbeknownst to her, the individuals couldn't even fetch bread. So entrepreneurial French chefs were quick to capitalize on the market at and after the French Revolution, seeing that the middle class was in need of food, and that's really where these kind of the lower end restaurant of the consommes and the cheap food began, but at the same time, there was this bourgeois food culture which was of the nobles in France. And as the French Revolution went on, and as the French Revolution passed, after the uprising over food and otherwise, they were able to begin to create a more regulated restaurant system, commercialized restaurant system, and ultimately a more balanced food system whereby more people could access better food menus, which were offering dishes individually portioned priced and prepared to order were introduced to the public for the first time. Again, previously that was something that was in the bourgeois culture of people like Marie Antoinette and the nobles, and finally reached the proletariat, or the lesser off, or the middle class in France after the French Revolution. And so food played a very important role in that revolution.